We begin at the gateway of the decree, where the paradox of fragile human speech meets the profound law of mind. And as Emmet showed, this is where the deeper meaning unfolds. Words may seem fleeting, as though they vanish the moment they leave your lips, but Fox insists they do not disappear. They press themselves into the soft clay of your subconscious, shaping patterns of obedience, forming realities you may not yet see. It is here, at this threshold, that the weight of a spoken decree becomes visible, not through mysticism for its own sake, but through the undeniable logic that thought dressed in speech becomes the blueprint of experience. A decree is more than a phrase repeated. It is a command, clothed in sound. You are not simply speaking to air, you are instructing the most loyal servant you will ever have, your subconscious mind. This servant does not reason, it does not negotiate. It takes the words given to it, wraps them in the emotional tone with which they are delivered, and begins to work tirelessly in the unseen. The question is not whether the subconscious obeys. It is always obeying. The question is, what commands have you been giving it without realizing? Fox often pointed out that people live surrounded by the effects of careless decrees. Casual statements like, "I'll never get out of debt," or "nothing ever works for me," are not harmless complaints. They are laws being passed into the hidden parliament of your inner self. They echo until they are carried out, becoming circumstances that seem to confirm the very words spoken. This is the cycle he sought to break. The unconscious habit of decreeing ruin, lack, or despair through careless language. To step into this gateway is to become aware of the authority carried in your speech. When you begin to realize that words are not decorative but formative, you start to take responsibility for the seeds you scatter. Think of a farmer who throws away moldy seed into his own soil. Can he be surprised when weeds choke the harvest? In the same way, how many weeds in your life are nothing but words sown without awareness, left to grow wild in the subconscious until they appear as obstacles, confusion, or stagnation? The power here lies not in theatrics, not in mystical tones of chanting, but in clarity and intention. To decree daily is to take the steering wheel of inner law back into your hands. It is to stand before the subconscious and say, "This is the pattern you will follow." And when repeated with conviction, the subconscious responds not because of magic, but because it was designed to obey the instructions pressed upon it. Yet this gateway is narrow, because discipline is required. It is easier to continue letting stray words pass unchecked. It is easier to complain, to echo fear, to repeat what society drums into your ears. But at the threshold of daily decrees, you are called into a new posture, the posture of accountability for every spoken word. Here the lecture of Fox meets the quiet accountability of your own tongue. What will you choose to speak today? Consider the way a craftsman shapes metal. Each hammer strike may seem insignificant, yet the form emerges blow by blow. So it is with daily decrees. Each word may appear minor, but pressed upon the subconscious day after day, it bends the inner substance of your being. There is no single strike that does it all, but the consistent rhythm reshapes the whole. This is why Fox emphasized daily, because habit engraves far deeper than impulse. At this point you may feel the tension of doubt rising. Can words truly carry such weight? Isn't this just positive thinking dressed up? Yet pause here. Positive thinking is often wishful, shallow, even fragile. A decree, in Fox's sense, is not wishful. It is a statement of reality spoken as command, not desire. It is the difference between someone saying, "I hope the sun rises," and one saying, "The dawn is breaking." One is tentative, the other carries authority. Authority is the key. Authority is not loudness nor arrogance. It is alignment. When your words align with truth and are spoken in the cadence of certainty, the subconscious does not argue. It obeys. And from that obedience, reality is bent in a new direction, not instantly, not always visibly at first, but undeniably over time. So the gateway stands before you now. You have entered by listening, by noticing. But the deeper crossing requires participation. Each day that passes, each idle phrase uttered, is another command written upon the unseen chalkboard of your subconscious. Will you continue to let chance write the orders, or will you take up the pen yourself? This is the weight of daily decrees, not a ritual for comfort, not a mantra for mood, but a disciplined use of speech to train the subconscious into harmony with truth. And as the first step on this journey, we are called to awaken to the reality that nothing spoken is neutral. Every word lives, every word instructs, every word commands. And as Fox warned, the subconscious is already obeying. The question that will follow us through every section is simple. Obeying what? We move deeper into the law of mind at work, where the mechanics of thought and speech begin to reveal themselves. The subconscious is not a philosopher. It does not debate or weigh alternatives. It takes what it receives and transforms it into patterns of behavior, emotion, and experience. This hidden servant never sleeps, never pauses, never complains. It is a constant builder, drawing bricks from the words and feelings you supply, assembling the unseen structure of your reality. Speech, in this sense, is not decoration, it is instruction. Every tone, every repeated phrase carries more than surface meaning. Behind each syllable lies vibration, rhythm, and emotional weight. These combine to leave an impression on the subconscious, much like drops of water etching stone over time. The spoken word is the chisel, and the subconscious is the stone that yields without resistance. Whether you are aware of it or not, the carving is always underway. When you begin to see this clearly, the illusion that words vanish after they are spoken falls away. Words remain alive, echoing beneath awareness, setting invisible processes into motion. When someone repeats, "I am always unlucky," or murmurs, "Peace will never come to me," the subconscious records these as commands. It does not distinguish between a casual remark and a solemn vow. It hears the tone, it feels the intensity, and it obeys. Over time, the outer life reflects the inner instructions, not because of coincidence, but because the subconscious was never designed to do otherwise. This is why daily decrees matter. Repetition is not redundancy, it is reinforcement. Just as a sculptor's repeated strokes refine the image within the marble, each repeated phrase sharpens the imprint within the mind. Some imagine that one strong declaration is enough, but the subconscious is most influenced by rhythm and continuity. Like a child learning language, it absorbs through steady exposure. The phrase spoken once may pass unnoticed. The phrase spoken daily becomes the law it follows. There is also a hidden element at play, emotion. Words stripped of feeling often fall flat, while words spoken with sincerity and conviction pierce deep. Think of the difference between reciting a line without care and declaring it with genuine inner strength. The subconscious listens to tone more than volume, to authenticity more than performance. A whisper of steady resolve can shape it far more than a loud declaration delivered without belief. Here lies both the caution and the promise. Complaints soaked in frustration may settle faster into the subconscious than half-hearted words of hope. On the other hand, a quiet phrase spoken daily with real alignment begins to carry immense force. It becomes like a steady current in a river, guiding all tributaries toward a single flow. The more you return to that current, the more your life begins to move in its direction. Think of how the body acquires posture. No one decides to slouch or stand tall in a single day. It is the accumulation of repeated stances, step after step, that establishes habit. Over months and years, the body simply follows without thought. So it is with speech. Repeated words set grooves in the subconscious until actions and circumstances naturally run along those grooves. At first it may seem mechanical, even unimpressive, but slowly the evidence builds. The spoken word has been working in silence, and eventually the results emerge into view. And this law is not mysterious or hidden from reason. It is simple once seen clearly. Thought is energy. Speech gives that energy form. The subconscious is designed to receive form and convert it into structure. The cycle is continuous and impartial. Just as gravity does not pause to consider who steps off the ledge, the subconscious does not consider whether the decree is hopeful or destructive. It carries out what it receives, faithfully and without complaint. What does this mean for the way you live today? It means every sentence is part of a larger construction. Every phrase is a tool in motion. You are not speaking idly. You are laying bricks, shaping beams, building something that tomorrow will feel inescapably real. This realization is not meant to burden you with fear, but to awaken you to choice. You are not at the mercy of old words. You can begin to speak new ones. Awareness is where the shift begins. Notice the words you allow to pass your lips. Ask yourself, what law am I setting in motion with this phrase? What seed am I planting in the soil of my subconscious? The very act of asking these questions begins to lift the fog of carelessness. You start to hear yourself differently. You catch the small phrases that once slipped past unnoticed. I can't handle this. I'm always behind. Nothing ever changes. These are not harmless sentences. They are scripts being handed down to the most obedient builder in your life. And yet, awareness alone is not the end. It is the beginning of responsibility. Once you see that every word holds power, the choice cannot be ignored. You will either continue to allow stray words to govern your path, or you will begin to direct the flow with intention. There is no neutral ground, for even silence leaves a kind of space waiting to be filled. The question is not whether decrees are being made, it is whether you are the one making them deliberately. Imagine walking into a workshop where tools are scattered everywhere, saws buzzing, hammers striking, chisels scraping, yet no craftsman is guiding them. The chaos still produces results, but not the kind anyone would want to live inside. Now imagine stepping forward, gathering the tools, and deciding what to build. The noise remains, but it is guided. The same tools that once created confusion now construct something purposeful. That is the difference awareness brings. The law of mind is always at work, but when you step into direction, the law begins to serve your chosen design. And so the stream of thought turns toward the question of design itself. If words are tools and decrees are blueprints, what shape should they take? How does one craft a decree that does not simply sound pleasant, but actually carries weight within the subconscious? The answer lies not in grand gestures, but in precision and clarity. The next step in this journey is not only to know that words command, but to learn how to shape those commands so that the inner servant can obey without confusion. There comes a moment in the journey of daily decrees when enthusiasm burns bright at first, only to collapse into what feels like a barren silence. This is the dead feeling, a strange desert of the heart where nothing seems to grow. Many who begin with zeal, repeating phrases with energy, soon encounter this hollow stretch. The words feel lifeless, the practice mechanical, the results invisible. It is as though the soil of the subconscious has swallowed every seed and returned only silence. This is not failure. It is the necessary valley between sowing and harvest. The dead feeling is not proof that nothing is happening. It is proof that something is happening beneath the surface, too deep to be seen by impatient eyes. Just as a seed must break apart in darkness before it pushes through the soil, Your words must settle into silence before they become visible in form. The break is painful because it feels like loss. But the loss is only the shell cracking, so that life inside can press outward. Notice the rhythm here: rise, sink, break. First, the rise of energy when the decree feels powerful, filling your chest with conviction. Then, the sink into emptiness when every repetition feels pointless. Finally, the break, that sudden, subtle shift when you realize the emptiness itself is the bridge. To walk through this valley is to discover that your practice does not depend on feelings. It depends on persistence. Think of the farmer again. He sows in spring, but the field looks barren for weeks. If he judged only by sight, he would call the season wasted. But beneath the soil, roots are forming, silent and unseen. The field looks dead, yet it is alive in the only place that matters. So it is with the subconscious. The surface of your feelings may look like drought, but below, structures are forming that will one day rise above ground. The dead feeling is the mind's resistance against change. Old patterns push back. The subconscious, long accustomed to a certain rhythm of complaint or doubt, hesitates to yield to the new decree. This resistance appears as dryness, a lack of sensation, as though the words have lost their spark. Yet this is the very sign that the decree is working. The subconscious is wrestling with new instructions, adjusting its grooves, and the friction feels like emptiness. It is here that many turn back. They decide the practice has failed, that words hold no power, that nothing is changing. They abandon the work just as the soil is beginning to break. But those who endure through the dryness discover that the dead feeling is not the end, it is the middle. To continue speaking into silence is to demonstrate trust. It is to say, I do not need visible proof to keep building. I will keep planting, because the law is sure, even when my senses doubt. This sinking stage also humbles the practitioner. When the practice feels powerful, it is tempting to think the strength lies in one's own emotion, in the fire of conviction. But when the feeling fades and only routine remains, the truth emerges. The decree does not rely on mood, it relies on law. Words spoken consistently, even in dryness, carry weight. The law does not wait for your inspiration, it responds to your persistence. Imagine a sculptor again, working not on marble this time, but on metal. Each hammer strike seems to do nothing, the surface unchanged. Strike after strike feels wasted. Then, suddenly, the surface gives way. The metal bends. All the previous blows, invisible in effect, were building pressure beneath the surface until the break came. The dead feeling is those invisible strikes, no sign, no sound of progress, until the shift suddenly appears. If you are walking through this valley, the question becomes, will you keep speaking when no feeling remains? Will you treat the words as law even when they taste like dust on your tongue? The desert is not the end, it is the passage. Every decree spoken in dryness is a strike against the wall of resistance. Each one weakens the old patterns, even if you cannot measure it. And when the break arrives, it is not always dramatic. It may be a small change in thought. A complaint you once spoke instinctively is replaced by silence. Or a sudden calm meets you in a moment where anxiety used to surge. These are the sprouts breaking the surface, fragile yet undeniable. The words you spoke in dryness have found their way into life. So let the desert teach you. Do not despise the dead feeling. It is the classroom where faith matures and where discipline deepens. Feelings rise and fall, but words spoken with steady conviction do not pass away. They shape the unseen until the unseen bends toward the visible. From here, the journey turns to precision. If every word is seed, then the question arises, how do you choose which seeds to plant? What makes a decree sharp, clear, and effective, rather than vague and lifeless? The answer lies in structure. To move forward, we must learn how to craft the decree itself so that the subconscious receives a command it cannot mistake. Precision matters. If every word is seed, then the form of the seed determines the kind of harvest it can produce. A decree is not merely any phrase spoken repeatedly, it is a carefully shaped command, crafted so that the subconscious receives it without confusion. The art here is structure words arranged with clarity, spoken in the present tense, and infused with conviction that leaves no space for doubt. The subconscious, though vast in its capacity, responds most readily to simplicity. Lengthy speeches, crowded with conditions and explanations, are too easily diluted. But a clear sentence, direct and uncluttered, enters like a sharp arrow. The form must be compact enough to bypass resistance, strong enough to carry weight, and consistent enough to sink deeply. That is why short, present tense declarations hold greater force than future promises or vague wishes. Saying, "I am calm," reaches deeper than, "I will try to be calm someday." One speaks law into the present moment. The other postpones transformation indefinitely. Clarity also requires positivity of form. The subconscious does not register negation in the way the conscious mind does. Tell a child, "Don't spill the water," and the image formed is of spilling. In the same way, when you declare, "I am not afraid," the image formed is fear. Far better to decree, "I am steady and secure." The mind seizes images, not symbols of cancellation. This is why decrees must state the reality desired, not the fear denied. Consider also the role of imagery in the phrase. While brevity is power, precision is equally vital. A decree should not be so abstract that it leaves the subconscious with no form to hold. To say, "Life is good," may be uplifting, but to say, "Peace flows through me now," provides shape. The subconscious can more easily replicate peace as flowing, as present, as active. The use of tangible words helps anchor the decree into lived experience. Structure is also rhythm. When words fall with a steady beat, they carry the weight of law. This does not mean chanting mechanically, but allowing the phrase to settle into a cadence that feels natural. The subconscious loves rhythm because rhythm signals certainty. The heartbeat is rhythm, breath is rhythm, and words that mirror these primal patterns sink deeply into the body as well as the mind. When your decree aligns with the pulse of your own breath, it becomes more than language. It becomes part of your very physiology. And yet form alone is not enough. A perfectly structured sentence spoken without conviction is a hollow shell. The subconscious listens not only to the words, but also to the energy wrapped around them. That energy is not performance, not theatrical display, but sincerity. A quiet statement of truth spoken with calm certainty penetrates deeper than a dramatic shout. The words are the vessel. Sincerity is the current that carries them inward. Let us bring this together with contrast. Picture two sentences, "I will not be broken again," and "I am whole and strong." The first is defensive, shadowed by the very image of being broken. The second is clean, affirmative, commanding wholeness. Which will the subconscious serve more readily? Always the clear, present, positive decree. The structure itself determines whether the subconscious receives a picture of weakness or a picture of strength. This is why crafting decrees is an act of responsibility. Loose, careless phrases leave the mind drifting, but structured decrees give it a compass. Once the compass is set, the subconscious aligns every current of energy in that direction. You may not see immediate change, but beneath the surface, the alignment has begun. The discipline lies in patience. It can be tempting to craft dozens of decrees at once, covering every area of life. But the subconscious responds best to focus. Choose one or two carefully structured decrees and give them consistent repetition. Just as a magnifying glass channels scattered sunlight into a beam strong enough to ignite, Concentrated repetition of one decree generates far greater impact than scattered declarations in many directions. And so, the formula is simple, but not shallow. Speak in the present tense, as though the truth is already established. Frame the decree positively, describing what you desire, rather than what you fear. Use concrete, tangible language that provides an image the subconscious can work with. Keep it short, steady, and rhythmic. Wrap it in sincerity, not performance. When these elements combine, a decree becomes more than words. It becomes a law written on the living surface of the subconscious, and once written, the subconscious does not erase it casually. It obeys. The question that now emerges is not only how to craft the decree, but how to weave it into daily practice so it moves from isolated phrase to rhythm of life. Words carefully shaped must also be consistently planted. Without practice, even the sharpest decree remains unused. To advance further, we must explore the ritual of daily repetition where the decree becomes habit, and habit becomes transformation. At first light, a street vendor lifts the dented kettle, sets it over the small flame, and begins the morning brew. The motions repeat every day, measuring grounds, rinsing the filter, listening for the faint tremor before water reaches a simmer. No speeches, no fanfare, just a rhythm learned by heart. This is what daily decrees are meant to become, not a burst of inspiration, but a craft. Words that steep the mind the way heat draws strength from the bean, slowly, predictably, every single dawn. We speak of practice, and the vendor shows the shape of it. There is a chosen time, not because a clock is magic, but because repetition needs a doorway. Dawn works for many. The world is quiet. The boundary between sleep and day is thin, and the subconscious is still soft from the night. Some choose late evening, when the lamps dim and the city exhales. Either way, the ritual meets the same requirement as the stall. Show up when you said you would. Do the small things well. Breath finds its part. As steam lifts, so do the words out on the exhale, steady and warm. The decree rides that breath, short, present, clear. Peace flows through me now. Not shouted, not forced, simply placed into the air with the same gentle certainty a hand uses to set a cup on the counter. The body feels what the phrase means. Shoulders ease, the jaw unclenches, the line between voice and flesh blurs, and the subconscious listens with both. Days bring their variations. Some mornings the street glows and buyers arrive early. Some mornings the sky is colorless and slow. On bright days, the ritual is easy. On dull ones, it feels like moving through wet cloth. Yet the vendor does not cancel the brew because clouds refuse to part. The routine holds. In the same way, there will be days when the words taste like water. No sweetness, no strength, only temperature. Speak anyway. The law at work beneath awareness cares more about constancy than mood. Tone matters. A harsh voice can curdle the experience. A tired murmur can drain it. But a quiet firmness like a vendor who knows the cup will fill carries far. The subconscious does not tally decibels. It receives conviction. Let the phrase be compact enough to remember without effort. Let it be spoken with a cadence you could walk to. Let it fit the breath so naturally that missing it feels like leaving a cup unfilled. There is also the matter of environment. Streets carry gossip. Headlines crackle from a radio. Debates flare and fade as people pass. The stall still does its work. In a world of noise, the decree becomes the one sentence you author on purpose. Speak it while washing the kettle, while arranging cups, while wiping the counter between customers. Not constantly, just consistently. These small insertions reclaim mental ground that random chatter would otherwise occupy. The ritual gains weight when it touches something real. Choose one area of life, the way a vendor chooses a blend. Not 10 topics at once. Focus gives the subconscious a single pattern to reproduce. For a season, select a decree such as, "Clarity guides my choices now," or "Steadiness holds me under pressure." Keep to one. Taste it daily until it becomes familiar. The mind, like a palate, learns through repetition what it is being asked to recognize. There will be mornings when doubt pulls up to the curb. A customer complains, the kettle sputters, a hand slips, and a little heat kisses the skin. In those moments, the old language rushes forward. Of course it goes wrong for me. That sentence is a decree too, and it wants your signature. This is where the ritual earns its name. Catch the sentence as if catching a cup before it tips. Replace it with the one you chose, not with anger, with steadiness. The practice is not about denying reality. It is about directing response. Consistency protects. Without it, phrases overheard in the day settle in by default stories of shortage, predictions of failure, the culture of hurry that calls stillness, laziness. The daily decree does not silence the city, but it gives you a counter to stand behind. Each repetition strengthens a line through the hours, so when noise tugs, you feel the tug and return. Over weeks, that line becomes a path you know how to walk even when traffic swells and tempers rise. Progress often hides in the ordinary. A month passes, and only small signs appear. A conversation ends without the usual spike of regret. An afternoon delay does not hijack the entire mood. The body remembers to breathe before answering a sharp email. It can feel unimpressive, like a stall handing out cups one by one while buses groan past. But the steady work is the work. The subconscious decides by accumulation. It takes the phrase you have chosen and builds a familiarity strong enough to carry you when pressure climbs. On some evenings, when the stall closes and the street softens, it helps to rehearse the day the way the vendor counts coins. Where did the decree show up? Where did it slip away? No judgment, just noticing. If the phrase was spoken 5 times today, make it 6 tomorrow. Let improvement be incremental and real. Soon the ritual begins to feel less like an add-on and more like a way of standing in the world. You carry the sentence between tasks the way a vendor carries the scent of roasted beans on their clothes. Others may not know what changed, but they notice a steadiness under pressure, a patience that did not used to be there. The decree, repeated in ordinary minutes, becomes a posture. From here, the journey enters terrain where routine meets resistance more directly. The street will always speak commentary from passers-by, headlines from the radio, a careless remark that lingers longer than it should. Beneath that public noise, another voice rises closer to home, the quiet critic that questions the point of all this, that says the kettle is old, the flame too small, the morning already ruined. To keep the ritual alive, we will have to meet that voice, hear it, name it, and teach it a new sentence. Every practice, no matter how steady, eventually collides with opposition from within. It does not arrive as thunder. It comes as whispers, the inner voice that asks, "What's the use?" Or, "You've said this 100 times and nothing changes." This is the hidden resistance, the murmuring that tries to unravel the work of repetition. To continue with daily decrees, one must learn not only how to speak, but how to stand when the inner protest rises. The voices do not announce themselves as enemies. They often sound familiar, even protective. They echo phrases from childhood, words overheard in workplaces, fragments of conversations that struck too deeply. Don't expect too much. People like you never get far. Stay realistic. These sentences slip in quietly as if they belong, and when the decree is spoken, they rise to argue against it, like hecklers in a hall. At first, the clash feels sharp. You repeat, "I am steady and secure," and a whisper answers, "You've panicked before. you'll panic again. You declare, "Clarity guides my choices now." And the voice retorts, "You've always been indecisive." It is a tug-of-war in language. The decree pulls in one direction. The inner echo tugs in another. If unnoticed, the echo gains strength, and the decree feels fragile, hollow. This is the second emotional climax: rise, sink, break. The rise comes when the decree first feels alive, charged with strength. The sink arrives when the counter-voice surfaces, dragging the mood down, draining conviction. And then comes the break, not by silencing the voice with force, but by pausing long enough to see it for what it is: an old script, not a living law. Recognition is the fracture point. When you realize the whisper is not truth but habit, its grip weakens. Imagine walking down a crowded street. Dozens of people speak at once: vendors, children, buskers. At first the noise overwhelms. But if you pause, you notice that not every voice needs your attention. Some you pass without reply. The inner voices of doubt work the same way. They can clamor, but they cannot compel. The moment you stop treating them as authority, you free the decree to speak with clearer strength. Practical steps emerge here. When the counter-voice rises, do not wrestle with it. Wrestling grants it weight. Instead, pause. Breathe once, as if giving the voice its moment to pass, and then return to the decree. Speak it gently, as though laying a stone on solid ground. Repeat without rush. This rhythm trains the subconscious to give preference to the new voice rather than the old echo. Forgiveness plays a role. Many of these inner sentences were not self-invented. They were inherited. Parents, teachers, peers, sometimes even strangers, spoke words that carved early grooves. To face the inner voice is not only to resist it, but to forgive its source. Forgiveness is not agreement, it is release. When you forgive, you loosen the voice from its authority. You see it as a leftover fragment rather than a current truth. And in that release, the decree gains room to breathe. Another layer of practice is what might be called the pillar decree. This is the phrase you return to when every other feels challenged. It is the anchor sentence, the one truth so central that it steadies all others. For some, it may be as simple as, "Life supports me now." For others, "I am whole." This pillar is not elaborate, it is elemental. When noise grows loud, repeat the pillar until the atmosphere shifts. It becomes the foundation upon which other decrees can later be built again. There will be days when the voices feel relentless. They circle the mind, waiting for fatigue, hoping you will abandon the practice. On those days, the act of continuing is victory itself. Even if the decree is spoken without feeling, even if the voice inside mocks the effort, persistence writes its own testimony. The subconscious notices not only the words, but also the endurance behind them. Every repetition under resistance is like training a muscle under heavier weight. The break eventually arrives in quiet form. One day you notice that the old sentence no longer comes as quickly, or when it does, it feels weaker, like an echo in an empty hall. The decree has begun to take root. The subconscious has shifted its loyalty. The servant that once obeyed doubt is now learning to obey clarity. This stage reveals the dignity of the practice. Daily decrees are not about avoiding conflict or silencing all doubt forever. They are about teaching the mind a new loyalty, showing it by steady example which voice to serve. The critic may still murmur, but its power fades as the decree grows stronger, and this sets the stage for a deeper exploration. How can one not only practice decrees, but also measure their impact? How can the unseen progress of the subconscious be traced in tangible ways, so that endurance is supported by evidence? From here, we turn toward the discipline of training and measurement, learning to track the subtle shifts that prove the law is already at work. The work of daily decrees thrives on persistence, yet persistence becomes more sustainable when the path can be measured. Without some sense of movement, the mind slips back into doubt, wondering whether the words are simply echoes cast into empty air. Measurement gives shape to progress, even when the changes are subtle. To train the subconscious is to train a living system, and every system benefits from feedback. Think of an apprentice learning carpentry. At first, the cuts are rough, the joints uneven, but with each week, the apprentice records the results, compares them to the blueprint, and adjusts. Improvement is not left to chance. It is observed, tracked, refined. In the same way, decrees should not be spoken blindly forever. They are living experiments, and the subconscious is both workshop and apprentice. To guide it, you must keep record. The simplest tool is a journal, not a complex ledger, but a space where 3 things are captured each day: the words spoken, the feelings they stirred, and the outcomes noticed. Call them the 3 variables: speech, emotion, and result. Begin by writing the decree itself. Then, note the emotional tone when spoken. Was it weary, calm, confident? Lastly, observe any shifts, however minor, that appeared in thought, mood, or circumstance. These observations need not be dramatic. Even "I felt slightly less anxious during the meeting" is a valid marker. Over 7 days, the journal becomes a mirror. Patterns emerge. Perhaps you notice that the decree feels strongest in the morning, but weakens in the evening. Perhaps you see that certain words trigger resistance, while others flow with ease. These details are gold. They reveal how the subconscious is responding, where alignment is firm, and where refinement is needed. Without this feedback, one might abandon a decree too soon, mistaking silence for failure. The rhythm of 7 days has its own wisdom. A week is long enough for patterns to surface, yet short enough to keep motivation alive. At the end of each week, review the entries. Ask, what changed, however slightly? Which decrees carried more weight? Where did old voices rise, and how did I respond? This reflective pause is not judgment, but calibration. It sharpens the tool, ensuring that the next week's practice is more focused. Experimentation also has its place. Just as a craftsman tests different tools for different materials, you may test variations of phrasing. One week you speak, "I am calm and steady," and record the results. Another week you shift to, "Peace holds me now," and note the difference. This is not contradiction, it is refinement. The subconscious responds uniquely to certain words, rhythms, and tones. Over time, your journal becomes a personal map of language, the vocabulary that most effectively shapes your inner servant. Yet discipline is required. Measurement must not become obsession. The goal is not to chase outcomes desperately, but to build steady trust in the process. This is why each review should include a reminder. Do not cling to results. Cling to consistency. The subconscious does not yield to frantic checking. It yields to calm repetition. The journal is a compass, not a stopwatch. It points direction. It does not demand instant arrival. A paradox emerges here. The more faithfully you practice and record, the less urgent the need for proof becomes. You begin to sense progress in the way one senses the tide's subtle shifts, slow but certain. The journal reassures, but the deeper assurance comes from living the rhythm long enough to trust it. The discipline matures into quiet confidence. My words are working even when I do not see them yet. This stage also strengthens accountability. Left alone, the mind easily drifts back to careless speech. But when you commit words to a page, you make them visible. They stand as testimony. The act of writing itself becomes another decree, reinforcing the spoken one. What once floated as sound now exists as record, doubling its weight. Over months, flipping back through pages, you see the journey not as vague memory, but as documented transformation. And yet, training and measurement are not only about personal comfort. They prepare the practice for wider application. Once the subconscious has been guided with clarity and the effects observed, those same decrees can be directed toward deeper purposes, healing wounds of the heart, restoring balance in the body, and opening paths of prosperity. To move forward is to carry the law of mind beyond experiment and into lived application, where its fruits are not only measured but shared. Healing and prosperity. Two words that sound distant from each other, yet at their root they spring from the same soil. Healing restores harmony within, while prosperity extends harmony outward into the world. When daily decrees are carried from experiment into application, they begin to touch both of these realms. They do not function as quick cures or instant wealth, but as channels that align the subconscious with wholeness and provision. Picture a garden enclosed by a simple fence. Inside, the soil is tended with care, weeds pulled, water poured, seeds planted deliberately. That inner space represents the work of healing. The gardener does not add what is foreign, they nurture what is already there, allowing the soil to release its hidden vitality. Daily decrees work in the same way for the mind and body. When spoken with steadiness, they help uproot the invasive weeds of fear and doubt, replacing them with words that nourish resilience. Over time, balance is restored, not because something external was forced, but because the inner field was given proper care. Healing in this sense is not confined to the body. It reaches emotions, relationships, patterns of thought. A phrase like, "Peace flows through me now," spoken consistently, begins to soften old wounds. The subconscious, long accustomed to rehearsing pain, is introduced to a new command. Slowly, the inner climate changes. The nervous system learns to breathe again, the heart to ease its grip, the mind to stop circling the same old fears. This is not spectacle. It is gradual restoration, quiet, steady, often unnoticed, until one day you realize the heaviness has lessened. Prosperity is the garden's outward flowering. Once the soil is healthy, the plants bear fruit that feeds beyond the fence. In the same way, decrees of wholeness naturally extend into the realm of provision. A mind trained toward steadiness is more alert to opportunity. A heart no longer ruled by fear takes risks aligned with growth. Prosperity is not summoned like a genie. It is the consequence of an inner environment that welcomes expansion rather than resists it. Consider how easily scarcity phrases dominate society. Every headline warns of shortage, every conversation turns toward complaint. Without a counter, these phrases settle in the subconscious, shaping expectations of lack. But when daily decrees declare sufficiency, "Life supports me now," or "I walk in abundance of wisdom and resource," the subconscious begins to orient differently. Choices shift, attention sharpens. You notice possibilities once ignored. The outer circumstances respond not by magic, but by the alignment of inner readiness with outer opportunity. Real stories testify to this pattern. A woman burdened by constant worry about finances begins the simple decree, "I have enough and more arrives." At first it feels false, even foolish, but she repeats it daily through doubt and dryness. Weeks later, she notices a new calm when paying bills. A month later, she volunteers for a small project at work that had previously felt overwhelming. That project leads to new trust from her manager and eventually to a promotion. The decree did not drop money from the sky. It reshaped her inner posture so she could step into opportunities she once avoided. Boundaries matter here. Decrees are not blank checks. They cannot bypass the natural laws of effort, responsibility, or time. Healing is not guaranteed, and prosperity is not delivered on demand. But decrees do prepare the soil, aligning the subconscious so that healing has room to work, and prosperity finds a welcome channel. They do not replace doctors, labor, or planning. They strengthen the ground in which those efforts bear fruit. This balance is crucial. Without it, one risks using decrees as superstition, chanting phrases in hope of avoiding reality. That path leads only to disappointment. The real power lies in harmony, spoken words shaping inner readiness, while outer actions flow naturally from that alignment. Healing and prosperity are not opposites, but partners, one tending the roots, the other gathering the harvest. As this practice matures, you may find that decrees once spoken privately begin to radiate outward. Your calmness steadies those around you. Your confidence opens doors for others. Prosperity extends beyond personal gain into generosity, healing beyond personal relief into compassion. What began as a daily ritual for the self becomes a quiet gift to the community, rippling outward in unseen ways. And yet, even in these fruits, there will come another silence, a longer stretch where the results seem delayed, the ground looks barren again, and doubt creeps back. This is the third emotional climax, when healing feels stalled and prosperity seems distant, when the void stretches out and you wonder if the practice has lost its power. To move forward, we must step into that void itself to discover the strange light that glows when nothing visible appears. What if the fog itself began to glow? A lighthouse turns in slow circles on the headland, its lamp sweeping the dark with a patience that does not argue, does not hurry. At first, the beam seems to cut nothing but emptiness. Minutes pass, then hours. The mind wants fireworks. The sea offers silence, yet the lamp keeps turning. Somewhere in that endurance, the fog starts to change. Still fog, still quiet, but now carrying light. This is the season when daily decrees move through the long void, and the void returns a soft answer. The rhythm lands again. Rise, sink, break. You rose when the practice felt vivid and strong. You sank when the dead feeling stretched from days into weeks, as if nothing in the world would ever shift. And now, without spectacle, something breaks not the law, but your need to watch it constantly. The decree continues to turn like the lamp, steady, faithful, unentertained by doubt. The subconscious responds in kind. Obedience is not always loud. This obedience is easy to miss because it first appears as omission. You do not snap during the delay at the bank. You do not spiral when the email arrives late. You leave a room without replaying every sentence you said. There is no trumpet to announce this, only the absence of the old reaction, like a wave that simply never hits the shore. The void has not vanished, but its atmosphere has changed. It no longer steals your breath. It holds you, and in that holding, it starts to glow. Here the mind learns a new relationship with time. You speak the decree without peering over its shoulder to see whether it worked. You speak it as a way of standing, the way the lighthouse stands even when no ship is in sight. The subconscious loves this steadiness. It hears the command as climate rather than event. Without fanfare, it reorganizes loyalties away from crisis toward calm, away from shortage toward sufficiency, away from fear toward quiet strength. The temptation, even now, is to force a sign, to throw more words at the sky, to test the soil each morning by digging it up with anxious fingers. But the lamp does not speed its turn to please the fog. It trusts its own cycle. So you return to simple cadence, the chosen phrase, the ordinary breath, the unhurried tone. You discover that maturity in the practice is not louder faith, it is gentler authority. And then there are the small illuminations. A sentence you once believed, "I always ruin good moments," arrives weakened like an echo from another room. A meeting that would have sent the body buzzing now passes with a steady pulse. A bill is larger than expected, yet instead of collapsing into panic, the mind begins to sort next steps. None of this means perfection. It means the subconscious has begun to obey a different script. The glow is not spectacle, it is orientation. This glow is quiet, but it is not passive. It nudges choices. You take a walk rather than doom scroll through midnight. You ask for clarification instead of assuming attack. You finish the day's smallest task rather than surrender to the myth that everything must be solved at once. In these unremarkable acts, the decree lives. It ceases to be a separate practice and becomes a way to handle the ordinary, precisely where life is most often won or lost. Of course, the sea remains the sea. Fog returns on certain mornings. Old stories still try their lines. You may go hours without remembering the phrase, then notice the slip and quietly return. This is not regression, it is navigation. A lighthouse does not resent the weather it was built to meet. It shines because fog exists. In the same way, the practice is not threatened by the void. It is dignified by it. The void provides the canvas on which obedience can be seen. There is also a tenderness that grows here, a soft regard toward your own past self. The one who strained for results, who measured every hour, who mistook silence for failure, that self did not know the sea yet. Now you do. You learn to thank the early attempts without inheriting their anxiety. Gratitude becomes part of the decree's tone, and gratitude carries its own light into the subconscious. It tells your inner life, we are not at war with ourselves. It tells your habits, we are changing without punishment. Because the glow is subtle, it is wise to continue simple markers of progress. The journal from earlier weeks now reads differently. You glimpse threads running through the entries, fewer spikes of reactivity, more instances of steady return. You still refuse to cling to outcomes, yet the pattern is undeniable. The lamp has been turning. The fog has been learning to hold light. Sometimes evidence is not a miracle. It is a line that refuses to break. A word about hope. Hope in this stage is not the thin hope of wishing. It is a quiet agreement with what you have already witnessed inside yourself. It speaks with an even tone. I continue, and my continuation changes me. When setbacks appear, and they will, it does not accuse you or the practice. It remembers the coastline. It knows where it stands. The decree spoken today as yesterday becomes a shelter for tomorrow. Eventually you notice how this inner obedience alters the room around you. Conversations shift because you bring a different center. Decisions improve because they are no longer rushed by fear. Friends feel safer near you because you are no longer fighting invisible storms in public. The glow is not yours alone. It travels. The lamp serves ships it will never meet. The arc of this section does not end with triumph. It rests in steadiness. The break is less a shattering than a settling. You know the void will return, and you know what to do when it does. You speak with the same cadence. You stand in the same posture. You watch as the fog holds a little more light each time. This is how obedience becomes character. From here, the journey turns toward integration. If the decree has become a way of standing, what does it mean to live by it in every room speech, guarded not by fear but by respect, discipline carried without hardness, kindness threaded through instruction? The lamp, after all, was built into the lighthouse, not perched loosely on top. In the same way, the words must now be built into the days, not as a trick, but as a life. Integration is where the practice proves itself. Words stop behaving like separate exercises and begin to guide how we show up at the desk, on the call, in the kitchen, in traffic. Daily decrees become a way of standing in the world. We are no longer testing phrases. We are living by living words. Living by living words begins with stewardship of speech. The mouth is a gate. The heart is a storehouse. What flows out of the gate tends to refill the storehouse. Guarding the gate is not about fear or self-censorship. It is about respect for power. Careless sentences, typical. That's just my luck. No longer pass unchecked. When one slips through, we do not scold ourselves. We repair it. A clean replacement follows quickly. I meet setbacks with steadiness, and I move one step forward. The repair is part of the training. It prevents a small leak from becoming a flood. Discipline becomes gentle and consistent rather than hard and brittle. We hold two simple rhythms: an anchor decree spoken at appointed times and a living decree woven through ordinary motions. The anchor might greet the morning and the night. The living decree rides practical moments, a quiet line before opening the inbox, a steady phrase before speaking in a tense room, a soft sentence while washing a plate. Continuous, not constant. Present, not pressured. The practice fits the day like a well-worn jacket, useful, unforced, durable. Identity settles under the language. At the beginning, we say decrees. Over time, the deeper shift occurs. We become someone whose words align with truth. Choices flow from this sense of self. A person who identifies as steady will structure the day to protect steadiness. A person who identifies as clear will avoid environments that fog the mind. The decree moves from describing reality to defining posture. Posture shapes path. Environment matters because language is communal. Rooms have dialects. Some trade in urgency and sarcasm, others in care and precision. We cannot control every room, but we can seed a different tone. A measured response slows a heated thread. A concise sentence cuts needless complication. A kind closing restores dignity to a difficult exchange. Change is rarely announced. It is embodied. Living words carry a quiet gravity that others begin to feel. Silence takes its rightful place. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of choosing the next sentence well. A brief breath before speaking is not hesitation. It is respect for the gate. In that pause, the mind remembers the pillar line, "Life supports me now," or "Clarity guides my choices," and lets it color the words that follow. The result is fewer repairs needed later and fewer conversations we wish we could take back. Decision-making becomes cleaner. Instead of arguing in circles with worry, we let the decree set the frame. Steadiness holds me under pressure. From within that frame, we ask, what is the next right step? We do not demand a guaranteed outcome. We choose the smallest faithful action, one clear email, one honest boundary, one line removed from an overfull calendar. Living words are not shortcuts around work. They are coordinates for wise work. Care for others finds a stronger footing. The same discipline we bring to our own speech extends outward. We refuse to hand people labels that shrink them. We decline to rehearse stories that trap them. When encouragement is needed, we do not sprinkle slogans. We offer grounded sentences that restore agency. You've done hard things before. Your pace here is enough. Living words grant strength without pressure and hope without spectacle. Maintenance keeps the practice supple. A brief weekly review, 3 minutes. No drama asks what the decree shaped, where it slipped, how it can fit the coming week. Each month we consider whether the pillar line still serves or whether a new central sentence should carry the season. We do not collect slogans, we cultivate a small, strong vocabulary. Tools, not trinkets. Inevitably, a rough day arrives and the old script tries to make a comeback. The repair remains simple. We let the first reaction pass without fueling it. We name the returning line. We answer with the pillar. We take one grounded action aligned with the decree. Progress is not the absence of old lines. It is the speed and kindness with which we return. What emerges over time is character. The subconscious has learned its new loyalty and keeps working quietly on our behalf. Speech holds shape. Choices reflect center. The gap between what we say daily and how we live daily narrows until they match more often than not. This is not perfection. It is coherence. Coherence is strength, and strength held gently becomes shelter. Colleagues exhale when we enter the conversation. Family tension softens because one person carries a steady rhythm. The city still roars, but inside the gate, the current is ordered. Living words do not make life easy, they make us ready. The path continues without fanfare. We keep the morning and evening anchor. We keep the living decree moving in the small tasks. We keep the journal lightly enough to learn, not enough to crowd the heart. We keep repairing slips with kindness. We keep choosing rooms and inputs that respect the power of language. We keep tending the storehouse so the gate flows clean. We learn to craft the seed, to sow in rhythm, to endure the dry valley, to face the inner voice, to measure without clinging, to apply the law to healing and to provision, to wait through the long void until it began to glow. Living by living words is the quiet harvest of that whole journey. The work is not over. It is underway, like a river that has found its bed and now moves with its own steady will. Set the cup for tomorrow's first sentence. Let the mouth remember its gate, the heart its storehouse, the mind its loyal servant. Speak the word that fits the day you mean to build, and then walk into that day as if the ground were ready because, in ways seen and unseen, it is. Let the shoulders settle a little lower. Let the back rest against what is supporting it. Breath moves in, breath moves out. No rush. The day does not need more from you now. The words have done their work for today, and that is enough. Let the jaw unclench. The tongue relaxes from the roof of the mouth. The brow smooths. A quiet sentence, almost under the breath. Steadiness here, ease here, peace here. Not a performance. Simply a tone that tells the whole body we are safe to release. Thoughts will pass through. Some will ask to be solved. They can wait. The gate is closed for the night except to the few lines that keep watch. Choose one. A simple pillar, let it rest on the exhale and return on the next. And, like a small light left on in a hallway, it is not meant to dazzle, only to guide. The heart slows. Muscles remember how to be soft. If an old sentence wanders in, anxious, critical, loud, let it drift by like a car passing on a distant road. The pillar remains. Breath remains. The room holds. Tomorrow has its own grace. The morning anchor will meet you where you wake. The day will open and close like it always does, and you will carry one clear line through it. That is enough. The subconscious hears consistency more than volume. It knows the voice you have chosen to trust. For now, this is the practice. Allow rest to do what only rest can do. The law continues quietly beneath sleep. The loyal servant keeps arranging what you placed in its hands. Lay the day down. Let the night be kind. The light is still on, small and steady, and it will be there when you open your eyes.